So this is a talk put on by Kent City University. We're part of the Occupy London movement. We put on talks both here and at Finsbury Square, mostly in that tent, but occasionally out here. Today we're very happy to have John Holloway along. John Holloway is professor at the Autonomous University of Puebla in Mexico. He's currently visiting Leeds University as part of the Activism and Social Change course there. His most recent books, Crack Capitalism and How to Change the World Without Taking Power, have been extremely influential within the kind of activist movement, particularly decentralized forms of activism that we've kind of seen growing. I can speak personally to being very influential in the student occupation movement last year. And today he's going to talk about his ideas of crack capitalism in relation to the Occupy movement. So without further ado, John Holloway.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Guy. Thank you very much for the others involved too, and inviting me here. It's really a fantastic honour to be here. Thank you. But not only thank you for the invitation, but really to all of you who are camping here or participating in the Occupy London Stock Exchange. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for expressing what millions and millions and millions of people are thinking throughout the world. Thank you so much for doing it and being here. Thank you so much for saying, no, we do not accept. No, we do not accept what they are trying to impose. And how dare they try and impose such misery on us. All I want to do today really is to talk about, to express, I suppose, to express what I want to say in the form of 4 slogans. Okay? Because obviously one of the great things that's been coming up out of the Occupy movement throughout the world is this fantastic creativity, all these slogans that are coming up and being used and catching on and catching people's imagination. I just wanted to mention 2 that are I think my personal favorites at the moment. One is one that comes from Madrid, I think, where they're saying, we are not against the system. The system is against us. And that seems to me so important. So important, first of all, to say, well, the problem isn't people, it's not Cameron, or the bankers, it's actually the system. And it's not that we necessarily grow up being rebels or revolutionaries or anti-capitalists or whatever. But when the system starts attacking us, when the system starts destroying our lives, when the system starts destroying the world and destroying the future, then we are here, we fight not because we are against the system, but because we are attacked by the system. And the other slogan I really like is one that comes from Athens, where they say, we are not indignant. We are not indignant. We are determined. We are determined. It's not that we're here just to express our indignation or our rage or outrage at what is happening, but we are determined to change things. We are determined to break the system that is attacking us. We are determined to create a world, another world, a better world, a completely different world. And those 2 things seem to me very, very important. What I wanted to do is really just, once I started thinking of, in terms of slogans, I thought, well, perhaps to throw some more in, but no, not to solve problems, maybe to start things up. So I thought of 4. The first one is very simple. That's probably almost certainly one that we can all agree on. I mean, I understand, or at least I hope. I understand and I hope that we all come from different backgrounds, that to some extent we're here for different reasons. We come from different backgrounds politically, theoretically. But there is probably one thing that we can all agree on, and that would be the slogan, push back the rule of money. Push back the rule of money. Because the problem isn't the politicians. The problem isn't the bankers. Okay? The politicians, of course, are a problem. They're nasties. The bankers are a problem. They're even nastier. But the real problem is what the politicians and the bankers represent, which is the rule of money, which is the rule of profit. And the rule of money becomes ever more aggressive. The rule of money, you can say, well, money is just a way of relating to one another. It's a way in which we relate what we do to what other people do. It's just a medium of interchange. And of course, it's not like that. Money is a form of relating, but it's a form of relating that imposes itself on every aspect of our lives, that penetrates into our lives. It transforms our lives. And I suppose what we're living at the moment is this great assault by money, which it's penetrating ever deeper. So if you think of student fees, for example, it's not just about keeping people out of university. It is about, of course it's about that. It's about keeping the poor out of university. But it's also about getting students used to the idea that their whole lives will be lives in debt, that what they study and what they think and what they work at will be dominated by the need to earn money. Money is assaulting us, and it's assaulting us more and more viciously. And I suppose I see this Occupy here not just as saying we refuse. It is a we refuse. But it is we refuse that logic. We refuse that way of doing things. We refuse the rule of money. So you can think of it, if you don't want to be too radical, I suppose we can think, well, let's push back the rule of money. And if you think of the struggles of the last century, if you think of the whole first half of the last century, in a sense, that's what people were doing all the time. They were fighting to push back the rule of money. That's what they fought for in the revolutions. That's what the revolutionary movements fought for. They said, let's have a society that is not dominated by money. But also that's what the welfare state was about. It was pushing back the rule of money, pushing it back out of certain areas. And in the last 35 years, we've seen a great new assault by money, going back into every area of life, penetrating deeper and deeper. So now I think what we are saying, what movements like this are saying, and probably what we all agree on, is push back the rule of money. Money out of education. Money out of healthcare. Money should not be determining force in these. Money out of healthcare. Money out of housing, money out of the internet. Why not? Why not have a free internet service? And you can think of money out of one area after another. Let's push it back. Let's push it out. Let's push out the rule of money. You can think of it in a way, I suppose, like the anti-tobacco campaigns have been going, okay, to change area a bit. I mean, in a way, the way that the campaign against tobacco has been going has been to push smoking out of one area after another. And I think we can really say this, we can very well say the same with money. money out of education, out of health, etc., etc., etc. That's the first. That would be my kind of gentle slogan or minimal slogan. My second slogan would be that that's not enough, really. It's not enough to push money out of particular areas, because what happens is that it then comes back in. It oozes its slimy way around us and forces it back into our lives. So I think we have to go further than saying push back the rule of money. We have to say break the rule of money. Break the rule of money. Get rid of the rule of money. Because money, the rule of money, is destroying our lives. It is not only destroying our lives, it is destroying the world. It is destroying the natural environment. It is destroying the possibility of a future for humanity. So we must break the rule of money, break, in other words, the rule of profit, break the rule of capital. And one of the great things, one of the great demands in all these Occupy movements is real democracy, no? Real democracy now, and different ways of the assemblies, different ways of organizing. But as long as money is there, we cannot have real democracy, because all the democratic decisions that you can think of will still be taken in a context in which money is the determining factor. Money is anti-democracy. Look at Greece, look at Italy, and just in the last few weeks, look at the way the money markets sweep aside prime ministers. Thank goodness that they've gone, of course. Thank goodness to see the back of Papandreou and Berlusconi. But it was the clear manifestation of the power of money. Even more when Papandreou proposed a referendum on the European Union agreement. And money said, no way will you consult the people. Money cannot tolerate real democracy. If we want real democracy, then we have to think of breaking the power of money. And perhaps we can't do it all together yet, but what we can do is set up spaces where we say, no, here we will not accept the rule of money. Spaces, like I said, education, water, electricity. But we can also think of smaller spaces. We can say here, and this is in a way what you are doing, it's what you're doing in Occupy London Stock Exchange. It's saying, no, here money does not rule. Okay, so let's have the confidence of what you are already doing and say, yes, break money here, break money in every single way that we can, every place that we can. Let's construct and break money by constructing, as you are constructing, alternative ways of doing things, alternative ways of creating. And my third slogan is, let's fight for the right to be lazy. Let's fight for the right to be lazy. Let's not fight for the right to work. Let's fight for the right to be lazy, or perhaps what I mean is, let's fight for the right to do what we want to do, and at the rhythms we want to do it at. This is really the same thing as let's break the power of money, because it is the power of money that imposes labour. The fight against money, the fight for a different world, is necessarily a fight against the labour that is imposed by capital. It is a fight against the labour that constructs capitalism, because we know perfectly well that that sort of labour is killing us, destroying our health, destroying the environment, destroying the world. That sort of stressful imposed labour that we do not control. And if you look at the present crisis, if you look at the crisis of the euro, for example, was stated very clearly by a Chinese banker, the head of one of the leading Chinese banks, just a couple of weeks ago. In an interview, he said, the problem with Europe is the welfare state. Because as long as you've got the welfare state, then you're going to have labour laws that prevent people from working hard. What we need is hard labour. That, and if you look at what is happening in Greece at the moment, if you look at the whole struggle there, is to impose different rhythms of labour upon the Greeks. Make the Greeks work like the Germans. That's what it's all about. Of course, the Germans don't work like they think the Germans do either. But it's all about trying to make people work harder, trying to make people labour. And if we say, well, we already work very hard, then we fall into their game. I think we have to say clearly, no, we do not accept that kind of labour. No, we do not accept that kind of work because we can see how it is destroying the world. We fight for the right to be lazy. And my fourth slogan and last slogan is simply stop making capitalism. Stop making capitalism. Stop making this system that has a dynamic that we do not control, that has a dynamic that nobody controls, that has a dynamic that is ruining our lives, ruining the lives of the people of the world, that is destroying the world and destroying the future. And if capitalism exists today, it is not because it was created 200 years ago. If capitalism exists today, it is because we created it today. So the problem of changing the world is not to confront this great, huge monster that is outside us. The question of changing the world is simply to stop making the world the way it is. That doesn't solve the problem. We still don't know how to do it, but it changes the way we think about the world, about it. And then you can understand that what you and what we are doing this evening, what you are doing here in Occupy London Stock Exchange, is that you are not only protesting, but you are also refusing to create this world that is destroying us all. And for that, I thank you very deeply. Thank you.
And thank you very much for being here and sharing that with us and giving us some food for thought and some slogans to think about and also to discuss. So what we would like to do now is to have a discussion with John, and we will take some questions from you, and perhaps some questions from you to one another, and questions to you, from you to John, and discuss these issues together. The best way to do that is, I think, for people to come to the microphone to speak, because otherwise we're not going to be able to hear one another. So I would like to ask you, if you like to make a comment or ask a question, to come to the mic and do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Nick. I come from Greece. I've read your book, How to Change World Without Taking Power, and my question is that as long as we don't control state, the state can kick us out from here anytime they want, actually. And we cannot kick capitalism out of, as you said, education, water, or the commons if we don't actually control the state. So how can this actually work? Why not go for the easy way, which is taking control of the state and then do whatever we want with that? Thank you very much.
How do you want to
take
go?
a few?
Take three.
We'll take a couple more.
John, I heard you said you got another slogan too, and I would like you a little bit explain more about that. Actually, I like that slogan which you are saying. Okay, if I'm not wrong, make revolution or we don't take a power.
Sorry,
Make revolution, we don't take a power. Or get rid of capitalism, we don't take a power. I like it, but I would like to have more explanation about it. Thanks.
Hi, I'd like to amend one of your little slogans by reverting to an old slogan I can remember from many years ago. It was never fight for the right to be lazy, it was fight for the right to shirk. Not the right to work, fight for the right to shirk. And what I'd say is that whenever I look around me, so many of the jobs that people do seem completely useless. People are employed all over the world doing all sorts of things that are simply not necessary. A year or two ago, I had a Labour candidate coming to my door, and I asked him what job he did, and he said, "Well, I'm a consultant." And I said, "What sort of consultant?" And he said, "I'm a brand consultant." And I really can't imagine a much more useless job than a brand consultant. And there are the whole of the city of London is full of people doing useless jobs and siphoning out all the resources of our society. So very much I agree, fight for the right to shirk.
Okay, the first two questions I think were really the same, no? About the second one suggested the slogan of make revolution without taking power. I think it's really two parts. Okay, make revolution seems to me to be necessary, to be obvious. We may or may not like using the word revolution, but we are all clear that we cannot go on like the way we're going. We cannot accept this society any longer. We absolutely need to change society radically. The second part is, I think that we don't know how to do it. And we should start off by saying that we don't know how to do it. We should say that firstly because we don't know how to do it, and secondly we should say it because it opens a different type of politics. If we say we don't know how to make revolution, then we are saying the only way in which we can make it is by talking together, by discussing, by coming together, by interchanging ideas, by creating, by experimenting. Precisely what is happening at the moment. Okay. If we say, okay, so I think after the experience of the last century, we have to say this experience failed, and it failed dreadfully in lots of cases. Okay. We have to then look at the idea that was central to the whole question of revolution before, the idea of taking state power. And I think we have to say it doesn't work. It doesn't work simply because it puts us onto their ground. It's not at all the easy option. There isn't any successful example of it. There isn't any successful example of revolution at all, I suppose, but certainly there isn't of taking state power and trying to change the world. If we go into trying to state power, it means we get into their politics, we get into party politics, we get into all the little calculations about power and about caucuses and about stabbing people in the back and how we're going to move forward and about how we're going to win the next election. And it just seems to me that that sort of politics is terribly, terribly destructive. And in the last 10, 15, 20 years, the movement for change, the movement of rebellion, the movement that says, no, we do not accept, has been increasingly saying, no, we do not accept capitalism, and we do not accept political parties, and we do not accept revolutionary political parties either. And there's a whole surge of creativity in doing things in a different way that I think we have to pursue. Okay, the last one was just to comment. The right to shirk is lovely. Which is also the right to do creatively, the right to do things without having profit on top of us, without having money on top of us. It's the liberation of creativity, the liberation of other doing, if you like, and that surely is what this whole movement is about.
Our friend from Greece said that we should do the easy thing, and that the easy thing is to take state power. But I agree with John that the history of the last century actually shows that that's really difficult. And in fact, if people who are trying to change the world take state power, and that's what happened in Russia, completely against their will and very, very quickly, all the old rubbish, all the old relationships of capitalism very quickly reassert themselves. That's what happens. That's what happened. So that's the experience. I think it's not easy. I think it's very difficult. And I think that what I think is very, very hopeful about movements like this Occupy thing didn't just happen here. It didn't just happen in Wall Street. It happened in, I don't know how many countries it was. You probably know better than me. All over the world and all at once. And that does show an enormous potential creativity. And since it's not easy, we got to work at it. And I, as somebody who's been doing this for a long time, I feel really hopeful that young people like the ones here are working at it.
Hello. John, I read Crack Capitalism and I really enjoyed it. What I was particularly interested in, which I'd like to hear more about, was the idea of the two antagonistic processes within the making of capitalism. Firstly, the antagonism between creating stuff that we do and turning it into labour that we can put a price on, and then taking that labour and turn it into capital, which capitalists can profit from. And that historically there's been a strategic focus on organising labour to resist the exploitation by capital, but perhaps in the future going forward we need to look at the strategy of focusing on organising what we do in and of itself and resisting it being turned into labour. And I think that was a sort of theoretical development of the fight to the right to shirk, which I'd like to hear more about.
1 second. I just wanted to abuse my position as facilitator and make an intervention from a feminist perspective, namely to thank you for what you were saying around the right to be lazy and that we need to figure out how to do things differently, but just to qualify that laziness a little bit around women's work and reproductive labor, and how I think we shouldn't get confused when we talk about a refusal of work between refusing what are unnecessary forms of work and actually all of the work that needs to be done in order to reproduce our lives and being in the world. And I know that you're not saying that, but I just wanted to throw that into the mix for us all in our discussions, not to forget that and not to assimilate the right to be lazy or the right to shirk with forgetting about all of the necessary work that is mostly done by women all over the world.
Hello, I would like to ask your thoughts on monetizing dissent. There are
companies that are strong, like Pfizer, that deserve a global boycott, but to strategize a boycott on those companies most vulnerable to a boycott. And that would be, in my view, and many other people that have promoted it, a targeted boycott of Coca-Cola products.
Hello. When you were saying we need to push back money, well, that really reminded me of a lot of kind of racial rights groups or gay rights groups, where they want to push back these prejudices. And they pushed back to the point where now if I came out and said I'm a racist, everyone would look down on me. And I think we should try and work to a situation which, if we say I'm a capitalist, you'll be looked down upon, you'll be seen as being an awful thing.
You want to come back in?
Okay, yeah.
Do you want to hold it, or what do you prefer? I don't know.
No, I think that last thing is lovely, actually. Yes, we want to reach a stage where people are ashamed to say they are capitalists. And that, in a way, is what is happening. Well, it's not, no, it's wishful thinking. It's not what's happening. But it's certainly what's happening in Greece, isn't it? Where politicians are now afraid to show themselves in the street. They're ashamed. They're so much looked down upon by society that in a way that has been turned around. It seems to me that we have to think of a refusal in the sense of a kind of reclaiming of society. Yes, a reclaiming where you push back the politicians, push back the capitalists, push back the bankers until they hide in their corners. They're afraid to come out again. The question about the struggle about crack capitalism and the struggling of doing against labour. I mean, my idea, I suppose, is that the only way that we can think of changing society is in terms of creating spaces of refusal and creation. Creating spaces or moments where we say, no, we will not accept the logic of capital, we will not accept the logic of money, we shall do things in a different way. And you can think of these as being cracks in the texture of capitalist domination. And if you look around, if you begin to look around, well, we don't have to look far at all, but if you look around, you begin to see that in a way our whole lives are built on that. Our whole struggle to live with some sort of decency or love or friendship or trust. All our lives are built on trying to say, no, here in this area at least, we do not accept the rule of money. We do not accept the rule of capital. And you begin to see that the world is actually full of movements, large and small, which try to say, capital, keep out. Here we are organizing in a different way. And so you get the rise of the insistence on horizontality, of doing things in a different way, against hierarchical structures, the importance of assemblies and all the rest of us. Really as a movement of these cracks within which we are trying to create what we hope will be embryos of a different society. But what I argue, I suppose, in the book is that these cracks are always difficult, they're always contradictory, but they have something in common. And what they have in common is a different way of thinking about human activity, a different way of thinking about human doing, where they're saying, the way we are going to relate to one another, the way we are going to structure our activity is not as labour. We reject alienated labour. To reject capital means to reject labour. To reject labour means to reject capital. The struggle against capitalism has to be a struggle against labour. And it seems to me that that is something that's coming up more and more. And I don't mean by that it has to be a struggle just outside the factories. I think it's the people who have to labour most horribly in this world within the factories are actually the strongest, most strongly committed to the fight against labour. Okay. So the struggle against for a different society has to be a struggle for a doing that we determine ourselves against labour, and that relates very much as well to what Emma said. When I say the right to be lazy, I immediately qualified it by saying the right to do things at rhythms that we decide, the right to do what we think it is important to do, things that we enjoy doing. And again, if you take the Greek example, that is exactly the issue. It's the issue that it's kind of it seems to me that is the real crunch of the present crisis. That through unemployment, what they are trying to do above all is to impose labour upon us, to impose discipline upon us. And we have to say, no, we struggle for a world in which we decide what to do. We have to turn the whole thing upside down. The other question about the campaign against Coca-Cola, yes, I mean, I have no objection. I have nothing against campaigns against Coca-Cola. I just think we have to go much further. Okay, certainly to target certain companies, but it's not just a question of targeting certain companies. We have to say that whole way of organising society is wrong. It's the whole rule of profit that is wrong. Yeah.
Firstly, I'd just like to really echo what our facilitator said about the really productive work, which is overwhelmingly done by women at the moment, and expand a bit on that theme of productive work, because I think one criticism we get a lot here is, food here is donated, and we're really dependent on the capitalist system, and we just in denial about that, which there's an element of truth to. But I think we do know something about a system that works, the system that provides all our food and all our water ultimately, and that's nature. And when people actually learn about how to grow food and how to actually support ourselves directly, then that is using the system that really works, the system that capitalism is totally dependent on and is totally leeching off of. And so I'd like to really give a great shout out.
Can I just say, when they turned our water off the other day, but we still got water.
Great, exactly. Yeah, so find ways of supporting ourselves that aren't dependent on the system, that are dependent on the system that really supports capitalism and everything else. And there are a lot of people who are working to, do exactly that work and build those systems that are as independent of money as they possibly can be. And just any thoughts that John has on that.
Well, this is not so much a question, more of a reminder, because it's quite so pertinent to this conversation that we're having about taking power to ourselves and mostly purchasing power. I just wanted to remind you all, if you haven't known about it already, that December 2nd is Move Your Money Day. So that's taking your money out of the big nasty banks, putting it into building societies and more ethically minded banks. But it's not just banks, it's also energy suppliers and all sorts. You can check it out, there's a website for it, it's moveyourmoney.org.uk. So just a reminder for everyone.
There's nobody on this side.
Hello everyone. I just want to say that I appreciate John Holloway being here, and I think that Kent University is all about opening up ideas and discussion. But I also have to say that I think that what this movement is doing here and globally is not about changing the world without taking power. It's about realizing the power that we have, and I think that's a deep psychological idea. It's a very deep, in fact, I think that's largely what it's about. So I think on some levels it's good to talk about what the future could be if we make it, but I think that what we're doing is actually, in a sense, taking power, because we're re-seizing our own psychological power. And I can only say about the whole Coca-Cola thing, yeah, we're targeting one thing individual, Marks and Spencer's, Coca-Cola, whatever. This can be totemism. But I do tend to think when you have 200 or 300 trade unionists being killed in Colombia, and the union Central down there are demanding that we sort of stop drinking this sugar water, I think that we should do that. And I'm sure John agrees with that. But I just wanted to say that we are taking power. We're long-term taking power.
Thank you.
I just want to ask a question about prefiguration versus confrontation. So I think there can be a tendency in these movements to kind of form an alternative and then leave it at that. And there's kind of hippie communes across the world which have done that and are full of middle class people who kind of afford to be there and haven't gone any further, and don't really confront capitalism, don't really confront the things that make our lives collectively terrible. But at the same time, I think like disproving it or this experimenting with alternatives, this way of working is extremely important. So I just wanted to get any thoughts on how those two things fit together or can balance like confrontation versus like prefigurative politics.
Yeah, okay. Just firstly on what the speaker before last said. Yeah, I think the whole point about a movement like this is precisely that for me is building power. It's not, for me, I wouldn't call that taking power, because I think of taking power in terms of taking state power and sort of kind of taking something that somebody else has. And I think a movement like this isn't taking power, it's building power, it's expressing power, it's constructing power, it's expressing our power to do things, and that is absolutely fundamental. What we are doing is reclaiming the world. That seems to me that is our power. It is, yeah. The other thing about about the Coca-Cola, yes, no problem at all with what he said. I didn't know all the background, but I've absolutely agreement there. The thing that Guy said about confrontation and against, well, not against, but as opposed to prefigurative politics, I think there is a danger. I mean, there is a danger of, I don't know, I gave a talk last night in Brighton and somebody accused me of being fluffy. And I always think, yes, there's a danger of being fluffy. I don't really want to be like that. I think that's why I started off with the slogan from Athens, which says, we are not indignant, we are determined. We are determined to change the world. And I think what has been happening in this glorious year of 2011 can be seen perhaps as a declaration of war, a declaration of global war, in which people are saying, first in North Africa and the Arab world, in Spain, Greece, Britain, the United States, and over 1,000 different cities throughout the world on October the 15th. It's a declaration of war which says, no, we will not accept, we will not go on with capitalism. We are not only indignant, we are determined to destroy it. We are determined to create something else. But I think this creating something else has to be the leading drive, if you like. No? Just to confront actually doesn't take us anywhere unless we have different ways of living to fall back on. So that in order to have a real force in the struggle against capitalism, I think we have to go creating, and I think we are everywhere, creating other ways of living, other ways of relating to one another. So in that sense, I don't really see a contrast between confrontation and prefigurative struggles. The confrontation is at the same time a prefiguration. It is at the same time the construction of something else. A war, I said, I think we've declared a war. In some ways I feel at times, perhaps here, that perhaps it's a phony war. That here, at least, it has not come to out and out confrontation, out and out war in the way that it has in other places. I think that if we look at Greece, if we look at Egypt, if we look to some extent at the United States, the implications of this rebellion are perhaps even clearer than they are here. But I think that that's, in a way, I suppose, I'd just like to come back to say, well, we have to think we're not just here to protest, we're here to really change the world. Because if we don't succeed in changing it this time, then maybe there won't be another chance. Opportunities can go lost. The world can turn sour in the most awful, dreadful ways. So let us take seriously what we are doing throughout the world in 2011. And let's push and push to really transform the world, to really make it a different place.
Thank you very much, John. I think we'll wrap up the discussion there. I just have two things to say. One was we had the offer of some Iranian friends for some music, if anybody would like that and like to stick around for that. Yes? No? Yes? Fantastic. Okay. The other thing is just a very short announcement. One of the issues, of course, that is also pertinent is the issue of race. And this week at Queen Mary University, Cedric Robinson is going to be speaking about black radicalism and black Marxism. If anybody is interested in coming to that, then I'm going to be standing here. I can come and I can give you the details if you're interested in coming. So thank you once again to John Holloway for joining us today, and thank you to everybody for being here.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the honor. Thank you very much for what you're doing.